Hello everyone, my name is Stephen, I'm a programmer for Clockwork Chili, and in this video I'm going to be introducing you to Wade. Now Wade is a JavaScript framework for developing HTML5 games, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. So here we have choose a name for your project. We are going to choose Chili Catcher. Create project. Now here we see the main GUI. We have lots of different windows. On the left here we have a list of scene objects. Currently the scene is empty. The bottom left we have just our file explorer, and we can drag files into the middle box here, which we will do shortly. And on the right we've got where a lot of the meat goes, where we see our scene objects once we create them. So let's do that, but really to create a scene object we want something we can actually see, because a black screen's quite boring. So I'm going to go into some images that I created for this video, or stole from our artist, and I'm just going to drag them right across into here. Now normally I would put these in an images folder, but I'm being a little bit lazy, so then we're just going to select forest.jpg and drag it into the middle here, and now we have a forest in our screen. So I'm going to set this to 0, 0 by selecting it. So I'm selecting the scene object, going to properties, and choosing position 0, 0. Now this background image is 1280 by 720, as we can see in the sprites tab. So I'm actually going to lock the application window size to that just for simplicity's sake. So I select the scene properties. I'm going to choose 1280 by 720 as the minimum and 1280 by 720 as the maximum. And here we also have a default layer. Wade uses a layering system similar to an image editor, so everything on layer 1 is in front of everything on layer 2, and vice versa. So layer 1's at the front, layer however far you go back is at the back. So I'm going to put the default layer at about 5, but this background I want on layer 10 because I want it behind everything else. So we just select the background, look at the sprite, and I'm just going to set that to layer 10. So we're just going to check the size is right. Yes, I think everything's okay. I'm just going to click Save at the top left here to make sure our application is stored somewhere, and now I'm going to press Run. So sure enough, we have a nice preview with our background. So now that we have our nice background, we are going to add a character to the scene, and we do this just like we did with the background. We select our character down here, and we drag the sprite onto the scene, and what this actually does is it creates a scene object with this sprite. So we just drag the character down a little bit, and I'm going to position her at 0 on the x-axis just so she's dead center. There we go. I'm going to go back into the sprites tab now and just have a look. Yes, the size is good. Layer is 5. Now that is the default layer we selected earlier, so that's all working. And we're also going to give this character a name. So back in the properties tab, we go name, and I'm just going to choose player. Okay, now what this does is it gives the character a unique identifier. In Wade, you can access scene objects via their name, so it has to be unique, but it's a very fast system. It uses hash maps, so very, very quick and useful for us if we ever want a reference to our scene object. Now that we have our character added, we want to go ahead and add some animations, because at the moment all she can do is stand there. So we move over to the right, click on New Animation, and I'm just going to quickly go through and create the template for all of these. So image, we want our walking left image, walk side left. We want 4x4 cells, that's how big the image is. It is 4 images by 4 images. Speed 30 frames per second. And I'm going to choose the name walk left. Okay, I'm going to click New Animation again. Just expand that. This time we will choose our walking right animation. Again, 4x4 cells, speed 30, and we will call it walk right. Finally, we are going to add one more animation and expand that. Although this one is just actually going to be the idle image, but it's useful to have it as an animation, as you will see in a little while. So 1 cell by 1 cell, range 0. That should be fine. So the next thing we want to do, oh, actually I just forgot, I need to set up the, we want all these animations to loop, so I will select loop, on all three of them. And we actually want resize selected as well. That just makes sure the sprite doesn't do anything funky. So loop resize on all of them. It doesn't really matter on the last one, but we'll do it anyway. And if I select walk left and click active, we can see in the editor she actually walks. So that's a really nice feature. You can see what it looks like. But for the moment, we don't want any of the animations active. So I'm just going to select that again. Actually, I just remembered I forgot to name the final animation, so we will just call that idle. There we go, and we will save the project. I'll just close that. So now we have animations, but we need to trigger them. We need to have some control over our character. And the way we are going to do this is we are going to capture mouse events on the background. So we select the background scene object, and we click on the Functions tab on the right. And here we have a massive list of functions that are basically events, and they get passed a variable called data, which we will be using very shortly. And I think in this case I'm going to use onMouseDown. Now, if you were programming for a tablet, you would do exactly the same here. Wade automatically maps the events to appropriate handlers. So onMouseDown is the same as touching a tablet, onMouseUp is the same as lifting your finger off the touch screen, so it works very nicely. Now I'm just going to expand this tab here so I have some space to write my function. Now if you remember, we named our character earlier, and the reason is so we can access it here. So character equals Wade.getSceneObject, and we just put the name in here as a string, player. So now we have access to our character. Whoops, mistake there. Now we are going to create a state for our character, so we want to just store, we're actually going to store the animation name. So character.state equals, now we need to know if a mouse click has happened to the left or the right of the character. So the way we do this is data, that is the parameter passed to the event, screen position dot x. So if that is less than character dot get position dot x, that means we want to move left. So we are going to just return a string walk left, and notice that matches our animation names, and there's a good reason for that. Walk right otherwise. Excellent. I'm just going to quickly save that. Now, the next thing we need to do is actually move the character to the new location. So, character dot move to equal, whoops, not equals, brackets, there we go. So we set the x position, which will be the new position here, data screen position dot x, so we just copy and paste that. We set the y position, which will not change, so let's just character get position y. And then we set the speed we want to move, and I think 300 pixels a second or so should be about right, so I'm going to choose that. Okay, now one more line of code we need. Character dot play animation character dot state, and that is why we are storing the animation names in character dot state to make this very simple. So 4 lines of code, let's test it out. Okay. And I should mention, this is an alpha, so there are some minor bugs. That is one of them. Sometimes pressing run doesn't work, but if you press it twice, it fixes it. So now we're going to test, and indeed, our character does walk, and she walks the right direction. But I'm sure, as you can notice, she keeps walking while standing still, which is not exactly what we want. So, the way we are going to fix this is we are going to go to our character, Functions tab again, but this time we are going to go to onMoveComplete, because we are moving our character. When she finishes moving, that triggers this event, and here we are just going to write this, because we're already in the character, play animation idle. Now this is why we added the stationary sprite to the animation, so we can just do that in one line here. I will save again, run the project, and she does indeed stop walking when we get to the location. So now we have a character that can move around the screen, which is really cool. So Now we have our moving character, but the name of this project is Chili Catcher, so we need something for the character to catch. And in order to do that, I'm going to drag a chili sprite onto the screen. And that is a little bit large, so I'm going to go to Sprites, and I'm going to change the size to 60 by 60, noting the default layer is still working good. And we're actually going to give this scene object a unique name, Chili. We don't need to use this quite yet, but we will in a little while. So now we have a chili, but the chili is not going to do anything. It's just going to stay there and do absolutely nothing. So, like before, we need to give it some functions. So in the Functions tab, on Add to Scene, I'm going to record this dot bounces equal 0. Okay, now we need to go to the onUpdate function, which is right at the bottom of the list. So, we need the chili to go down, and we want it to bounce when it hits the ground. So, what we're going to do is this dot set velocity, and this is going to be an object we're passing in. We need to have this dot. Oh, sorry, no, the x velocity is always going to be 0. We can just keep like that like that. But the y velocity is going to change. So we are going to get the current velocity, get velocity dot y, and we're going to add some gravity to it. I'm going to say, we'll try 30, we'll see what that's like. So let's just save and play. And the chili drops straight off the bottom of the screen. Of course, that is meant to happen because so far we have not got any code to handle the situation where the chili is below the screen height. So, if this dot get position dot y is greater than Wade dot get screen height over 2. Now the reason screen height is over 2 is because in Wade 0, 0 is the center of the screen, so we only want half that. So if it's greater than that, we need to reverse the velocity. Now that's pretty easy to do, this dot set velocity again. And once again we create our object, x, 0, y is going to be this dot get velocity dot y times minus, we'll try 0.8. So what this does is it flips the velocity on the y-axis and makes it smaller, so we're losing energy in bounces because we don't want perfect collisions here, otherwise the chili would never stop bouncing. And as well as that, we want to probably move the chili up to the bottom of the screen, just in case if the chili was going so fast it was too far down, this could get triggered twice in a row, which we don't want to happen. So we are going to do this dot set position, and we are just going to have this dot get position dot x, and as for y, we are going to just use the screen height minus 1 to make sure it's always above the bottom of the screen. There we go, and also we need to increment our bounces variable that we created before. Now the reason for this is if we go over a certain number of bounces, whoops, just zoom the browser in. If we go over a certain number of bounces, we want to actually end the game. That is the lose condition. If you fail to pick up a chili before it stops bouncing, the game is over. So, here we are going to check if this dot bounces is greater than, we'll go with 15, then all we're going to do is Wade clear scene. A bit of a crude method to end the game, but it should work perfectly fine. So we're just going to save this and click run. Now we've got the black screen bug again, so we'll just redo that. Excellent, we've got a chili that bounces though. I actually think that it slows down maybe a little bit too fast, so let's try 0.85 there. That's better. It bounces for a lot longer, so hopefully after 15 bounces, the screen, yep, the scene is cleared perfectly. That is exactly what we want. So the only thing we need to do now is make sure that the character can collect the chilies. And to do that, we click on character. We go to on update. And now we need to use another one of Wade's functions. So, var objects equals this dot get overlapping objects. Now what this does is it returns an array of all the scene objects that your scene object is overlapping. So very, very simple. And obviously these can only be chilies because this function only checks on the current layer. I intentionally put the background on a layer different to this, so this will only be able to collide with chilies. There's nothing else in the scene. So all we do now is for I equals 0 objects dot length, while I is less than objects dot length, we should say, I plus plus. So in this for loop, all we do is Wade dot remove scene object. In fact, there is a way we could use remove scene objects, and that would negate the for loop. We could just pass the array straight into it. But I don't want to do that yet because we're also going to be adding points and stuff later on, so that would make it a little bit harder. So we'll just keep it simple for now. Objects I, and that should be it, I think, actually. Yes, so let's test our function. Let's just save and run. So let's see if we can collect it. Yes, the chili disappears. So now we have a chili that we can collect. Excellent. Now that we have one chili that we can collect, it would be great if we had more than one. So I'm going to introduce you to two things here. The first one is the template feature. So I'm just going to move this chili off the scene. And in properties, I'm going to select template. Now what this does is it just means it won't be displayed, it won't be part of most of the scene properties, and it also means we can clone it very easily. So we want a way of cloning this chili, but creating a spawn area and doing that would take a little bit too much time for this video. So instead, we're going to use an existing one. So I'm going to open new tab. I'm going to go to clockworkchili.com, share and fork. And what this is it's a place where people can share their codes, individual behaviors, and that's very useful for us right now because what we want is a spawn area behavior, and there we go. So we click on spawn area, and we see here particles being spawned in a box, so we'll just download that. Download to. Oh, I've already got this apparently. Excellent, okay, so what's that? Oh, that's a different demo, sorry. Getting confused. There we go, spawn area.js. So, like we did before, we can select and just drag it into our file system. So now we have spawn area.js. We need to tell Wade that this is a script, a behavior we want to be able to assign. So we go to the scene properties by deselecting all scene objects. On the right here we go to scripts, spawn area.js, add. So now that script should be available. So we need to add a new scene object, and this time we're not going to do it as a sprite, we're just going to click new scene object here. It generates a procedural square sprite, which is okay because we're moving it off scene, we'll never spot it. Let's just make this a bit smaller. And we want it to cover most of the top of the screen. So, now we have our spawn area, and I'll give it a name, spawn area. We're going to click on the behaviors tab, which we haven't clicked yet. But as soon as we do, we see this spawn area behavior, which we just added before. So we click add. Now this is the behavior, object to spawn. This is why we gave chili a unique name. So we enter chili in here. Delay 1 second, variance 0.1. That should be pretty reasonable. I think that will work. So now, hopefully, we should have chili spawning. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this code. It looks right. So all we did is create a scene object and add a behavior that someone else made to it. And we're going to click play. And yes, we do have chili spawning from the sky that we can collect. That is very, very excellent. And just to make sure, let's not collect one intentionally and make sure the scene is cleared. Come on. There we go. The scene is cleared. The game is over. Excellent. So, with our completed game, that concludes this part of the video tutorial. Hopefully you found it useful. If you have any questions, please go to clockworkchili.com here and scroll to the bottom and we have a contact us option here, or you can just ask in the forums if you'd prefer. So hopefully this has been useful to you guys. Thank you for watching.